Your authentic self doesn't need permission. Hey, pursuers. Welcome back to Pursuing Me with Sharita, the space where we slow down, reflect honestly, and grow on purpose. Over the last few episodes, we've been unpacking something many of us quietly struggles with. First, we talked about self-trust. Then we explored who are you when no one needs us. We looked at how being needed can become an identity. And last week, we talked about learning to be loved without performing. And last week, we talked about learning to be loved without performing. But today, we're talking and taking the next step in that conversation. Because once you start performing, once your worth isn't tied to being needed, there's a new question that naturally shows up. And that question is, who are you? When you stop waiting for permission to be yourself. Because here's something many of us don't realize. A lot of people aren't struggling to find themselves. They're struggling to allow themselves. Somewhere along the way, many of us learned that being accepted meant being adjusted. Maybe you learned to soften your opinions. Maybe you learned to stay agreeable. Maybe you learned to shrink parts of yourself to keep the peace around you. And those adjustments didn't happen overnight, of course. They happened slowly through family expectations, through social pressure, through environments where fitting in felt safer than standing out. So you adapted. You became the responsible one, the strong one, the reliable one, the one who keeps things together. And those roles may have served you for a long time. But the problem with those roles is eventually you forget where the roles end and you begin. Authenticity doesn't always disappear loudly. Sometimes it fades quietly. You start filtering your thoughts. You start adjusting your energy. You start measuring how much of yourself is acceptable in certain rooms. And before you know it, you're not asking, who am I? You're asking, who do people expect me to be? But here's something important about growth. Growth eventually creates tension because the version of you that was built around approval will eventually clash with the version of you that wants alignments. Can I get an amen to that? And alignment asks different questions. And not questions like, will people like me? But is this true for me? Not will this make everyone comfortable? But is this honest with who I'm becoming? And honestly can feel unfamiliar when you spent years prioritizing acceptance. Your authentic self doesn't need permission. But many of us were taught to wait for it. Permission, again, from family, from friends, from society. Even permission from the past version of yourself. We wait for validation before we change. We wait for agreement before we evolve. But growth doesn't work that way. The most important shift in life will usually happen before people understands them. And here's the part that can feel very uncomfortable. When you start living more authentically, some people will notice the difference, not because you're doing something wrong, but because authenticity changes the dynamics. You may start setting boundaries. You may stop over explaining yourself. You may choose peace over proving. And when you stop performing the role people are used to, the room could feel totally different. But that doesn't mean you've become difficult. It means you've become clear. Guys, authenticity isn't about being loud. It's about being aligned. Sometimes authenticity look like speaking up. But sometimes authenticity also looks like choosing rest without guilt. Letting people misunderstand you. Saying no without explaining every reason. Trusting your own intuition. Authenticity isn't a performance. It's consistency between your inner truth and your outer life. And the truth is, your authentic self has probably always been there. Under expectations, under the pressure, under roles you learned to play. Your authentic self didn't disappear. It was simply waiting for you to stop asking everyone else, is it okay to show up? So today, I want to leave you with the question. Where in your life are you still waiting for permission? Permission to speak honestly? Permission to pursue something different? Permission to rest? Permission to grow? Because the life that truly aligns with you usually begins the moment you stop asking the room for approval. Guys, here's something to remember about personal growth. Your authentic self doesn't need permission. It needs honesty, it needs courage, and it needs trust. Trust that who you are becoming is allowed to evolve. And I mean fully evolve. So guys, until next time, pursuers, keep showing up for yourself. Keep doing the inner work as I stress. And keep pursuing you. Peace.